All right. Um, here it is. Here it is, guys. First of all, before I get into this game, a couple of things. First of all, I'm sorry that this pregame video is going up so shortly before this game starts. I'm getting this up at 11. The game starts at 5, so 6 hours. Usually I like to do it the day before. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen with the Seahawks playing yesterday, but I would have normally liked to have at least gotten this up in the morning, earlier in the morning, but didn't work out that way today. But I wanted to get something out, of course, for this game of all games. You got to have something to say. Second of all, I do plan on streaming this game like I stream all Huskies games on this channel later today. Going to be 5 p.m. start. Should be starting the stream right around then. And we will watch the game play out. Good, bad, indifferent. We'll watch it through to its completion. So yeah, come on by, watch, even if you're a Ducks fan, because I know a lot of Seahawks fans are Ducks fans. I know there are going to be a lot of Ducks fans out there who might find their way to my stream. That's obviously totally fine. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But this is the one. This is the one that I think starting a few weeks ago, it became pretty clear that this was going to happen. There was some little bit of hope that Arizona's late season surge could maybe throw a monkey wrench into everyone's plans, but didn't happen. And now here we are with, I will say this, pretty clearly the two best teams in the conference. But the paths they took to get here are so different that we're in this very weird spot that you will almost never find yourself in as a fan of any team. This team was one of the best teams in the league this year in terms of pure result, right? We're 12 and 0. Only a few other teams are 12 and 0. And some of the teams that are 12 and 0 play in lower conferences, lower competition, like Liberty. Like there's no real equivalency between Liberty and Washington and Georgia and Michigan and FSU. So the results are pretty much as good as they can be. And here I am going into this game, playing a team that we already beat, and I'm having a hard time even finding optimism. Like that should not be how I feel about this game. That should not be my take on this matchup going in, but it has to be. When you look at the way Washington has played for the last, I'd say, month and a half, and then you look at Oregon over that same time period, it's so different. Like Oregon, the first half of the season, I'm not going to say they were bad, but they weren't like this. First half of the season, Oregon, not only did they lose to the Huskies, they had that Texas Tech game. Remember the Texas Tech game where they probably should have lost? And Texas Tech is not good. So Oregon had some problems in the first half of the year. But the second half of the year started, there's been no problems. They are elite offensively, they are elite defensively, they have depth, they have multiple levels they can beat you on. They have one of the best receivers in college football, one of the best quarterbacks. I mean, I already talked about how Bo Nix, if you're going to be straight honest, if you're just going to look at performance, he is the best football player in the country right now. He may win the Heisman. I imagine that he will, especially if he wins this game. And I think that in terms of all around performance, the only guy who you could even compare him with is Jaden Daniels. Now, some of it's the system, but right now that doesn't really matter that much. That's a conversation for draft time next year. Right now, Bo Nix is the guy who plays pretty much perfectly every single game. Like, he throws an interception, and it's a shocking event that makes you want to adjust your television to make sure you saw it. They've got one of the best, most productive rushing attacks in college football. And unlike a lot of these other offensive powerhouses, they're really good on defense too. They have become a defensive powerhouse too. They've got players like Birch and Dorless on that defensive line that give everybody problems. They were good for them when they played us earlier this year too. And this is not one of those give up 50 but score 51 teams. Not even close. They beat you every way. And for the last month and a half, they have been. They have ascended to a different plane of existence since I would say Washington State gave them a pretty decent game. Like that game wasn't so good. At that point, it looked like Oregon might be kind of spiraling, but they snapped out of the spiral and are now playing on they're playing about as well as Georgia is playing right now. It's not that different to me. So there's no level on this Oregon team where I can find a real weakness. Like their offensive line doesn't give up sacks. They got a great offensive line. They got great receivers. They got that system. The defense is good. Obviously, their defense, you can beat them some. You can attack their secondary a little bit, but it's not a bad defense at all. There's nothing here where I look at it and I go, yeah, we're going to be able to take advantage of that. So this team has just ascended to that rarefied level. And Washington, I mean, since the Oregon game, they've been squeaking by. And they squeak by every time, but they squeak by. There are 3 games in the last 6 Huskies games where you can very clearly point to the result and say, look, that's a bad team you were playing or a below average, maybe just barely average team, and you needed tremendous good fortune to win it. Like, I go back to the Arizona State game, and we won that game because Arizona State basically had it in the bag, and then their bad quarterback, who had been bad all season and was still bad, finally was like, oh yeah, I remember I'm bad, and he throws a pointless pick 6, which was the only way we were going to be able to score in that game because our offense didn't show up. Like the only thing he couldn't do, and he does it. That game was over, and then he just gave it to us. Stanford. Stanford was driving to win the game, and then I think it was their tight end or something, dropped point blank wide open pass. They had that game on lockdown. It was going to come down to a field goal, and then their receiver just dropped a pass on 4th down. Defense had nothing to do with it, and that was the game. And then Wazoo. It came down to a 4th and 1 from your own 29-yard line or whatever it was, where you had to basically run a trick play to get anything going. I mean, we deserved to win that game, I guess, but even then, you had like the stupid roughing the passer call on Penix that provided most of our field position for the game-winning field goal, and like you look at these games and you're just like, how can I be confident now that we're playing one of the best teams? Like, I know we've beaten some good teams in that stretch too. We beat USC. We beat Oregon State. We beat Utah. These are good teams. I'm not saying they're not. But even in those games, we're not exactly instilling a ton of confidence. Right? Like, look what Oregon does when they're playing those teams. They blow them out. They blew out Oregon State. Dominated them. They blew out Utah. Absolutely flushed them. So, I know some people don't understand why I get on here and talk like this about a team that is undefeated through 12 games. And don't get me wrong, I love this season. This has been an incredible season. It's an incredible season no matter what happens today. But I have to be real about it. This Washington team is not some super well-rounded monster. This team goes as Michael Penix and the passing game goes, and he has not really played that well for, I would say, about a month and a half. I'm sorry to have to say it, and some people are saying he's playing injured. Maybe, I don't know. There's been at least one game in there where they came out and said, oh, he was sick. He was sick, he couldn't see, couldn't think, and that's why he was bad. So there was a little bit of that. But game after game after game, he doesn't perform at the standards. Now, one of those games was a bad weather game, so that was a little bit understandable, but some of those games aren't. The Wazoo game was not bad weather. The Wazoo game's a home game against a bad defense, and I think he sucked. I thought he was bad in that game, and I expected them to announce after the game, oh, he was sick, because that's how bad he was, and then they didn't. So it's like, okay, I guess he just played really bad against a bad Cougars team. Arizona State, he did nothing. Stanford, I mean, I'm not going to say he played bad, but he didn't instill a lot of confidence in a bad Stanford team. And even against, like, I'm not going to say he played bad against USC, but we won that game because Dylan Johnson just detonated 250 yards on the ground. Like, that is quite a support system to fall back on if you're Penix. And he played good. I don't think he played great. He hasn't played great since maybe the Oregon game. I don't know. A lot of people think he got hurt in that Oregon game and he hasn't been right since, maybe. But I seriously doubt he's gotten better in the last 6 days. So if that's the case, then we have a big problem. Because unlike Oregon, this team doesn't really have anything else they can fall back on against a good team. They can run the ball all over USC because USC's defense is an embarrassment, but they don't have a dominant rushing attack. They have a capable rushing attack that is potentially able to help you out. It's a supplementary part of an offense. It cannot be, in most games, the featured part of the offense. And Dylan Johnson might be playing hurt too, by the way. They say his foot's messed up still. So you really can't lean on that. And the defense, I mean, honestly, I'm not down on the defense right now, but I don't think they've got what it takes to go against Oregon's offense. They've actually, I got to give them some credit here. They have played phenomenally well in the fourth quarter for several weeks in a row now. Over and over again, they get to the fourth quarter in a close game, they clamp down and allow us to win by the skin of our teeth. That's happened several times this year already. But if I'm being straight honest, I don't think it's going to work against the Ducks. I am going to say, I'll say it's close. I'm going to say it's 41-34. But there's a big part of me that expects this to be kind of a blowout because these two teams are playing so differently lately. All right, I'll see you in 6 hours. Bow down to Washington.